October, year of the Depend Adult Undergarment. For Oren Incandenza, number 71, morning is the soul's night, the day's worst time psychically. He cranks the condo's AC way down at night and still most mornings wakes up soaked, fetally curled, entombed in that kind of psychic darkness where you're dreading whatever you think of. Hal Incandenza's brother Oren wakes up alone at 0730 hours amid a damp scent of ambush, and on the other side's dented pillow a note with a phone number and vital data in a loopy schoolgirlish hand. There's also ambush on the note. His side of the bed is soaked. Oren makes honey toast, standing barefoot at the kitchen counter wearing briefs and an old academy sweatshirt with the arms cut off, squeezing honey from the head of a plastic bear. The floor's so cold it hurts his feet, but the double-pane window over the sink is hot to the touch. The beastly Metro Phoenix October AM heat just outside. Home with the team. No matter how high the AC or how thin the sheet, Oren wakes with his own impressions sweated darkly into the bed beneath him, slowly drying all day to a white, salty outline, just slightly off from the week's other, faint, dried outlines. So his fetal-shaped, fossilized image is fanned out across his side of the bed like a deck of cards, just overlapping, like an acid trail, or timed exposure. The heat just past the glass doors tightens his scalp. He takes breakfast out to a white iron table by the condo complex's central pool and tries to eat it there, in the heat, the coffee not steaming or cooling. He sits there in dumb, animal pain. He has a mustache of sweat. A bright beach ball floats and bumps against one side of the pool. The sun, like a sneaky keyhole view of hell. No one else out here. The complex is a ring with a pool and deck and jacuzzi in the center. Heat shimmers off the deck like fumes from fuel. There's that mirage thing where the extreme heat makes the dry deck look wet with fuel. Oren can hear cartridge viewers going from behind closed windows, that aerobics show every morning, and also someone playing an organ, and the older woman who won't ever smile back at him in the apartment next to his doing operatic scales, muffled by drapes and sun curtains and double panes. The jacuzzi chugs and foams. The note from last night's subject is on violet bond, once folded, and with a circle of darker violet dead center where the subject's perfume spritzer had hit it. The only interesting thing about the script, but also depressing, is that every single circle, O's, D's, P's, and numbers 6 and 8, is darkened in, while the I's are dotted not with circles, but with tiny little Valentine hearts, which are not darkened in. Oren reads the note while he eats toast. That's mainly an excuse for the honey. He uses his smaller right arm to eat and drink. His oversized left arm and big left leg remain at rest at all times in the morning. A breeze sends the beach ball skating all the way across the blue pool to the other side, and Oren watches its noiseless glide. The white iron tables have no umbrellas, and you can tell where the sun is without looking. You can feel right where it is on your body and project from there. The ball moves tentatively back out toward the middle of the pool and then stays there, not even bobbing. The same small breezes make the rotted palms along the condominium complex's stone walls rustle and click, and a couple of fronds detach and spiral down, hitting the deck with a slap. All the plants out here are malevolent, heavy, and sharp. The parts of the palms above the fronds are tufted in sick stuff like coconut hair. Roaches and other things live in the trees. Rats, maybe. Loathsome high-altitude critters of all kinds. All the plants either spiny or meaty. Cacti in queer, tortured shapes. The tops of the palms like Rod Stewart's hair from days gone by. Oren returned with the team from the Chicago game 2 nights ago, red-eye. He knows that he and the place kicker are the only 2 starters who are not still in terrible pain, physically, from the beating. The day before they left, so like 5 days ago, Orrin was out by himself in the jacuzzi by the pool late in the day, caring for the leg, sitting in the radiant heat and bloody late-day light with the leg in the jacuzzi, absently squeezing the tennis ball he still absently squeezes out of habit, watching the jacuzzi funnel and bubble and foam around the leg. And out of nowhere a bird had all of a sudden fallen into the jacuzzi, with a flat, matter-of-fact plop, out of nowhere, out of the wide, empty sky. Nothing overhung the jacuzzi but sky. The bird seemed to have just had a coronary or something in flight and died and fallen out of the empty sky and landed dead in the jacuzzi, right by the leg. He brought his sunglasses down onto the bridge of his nose with a finger and looked at it. It was an undistinguished kind of bird, not a predator, like a wren, maybe. It seems like no way could it have been a good sign. The dead bird bobbed and barrel-rolled in the foam, sucked under 1 second and reappearing the next, creating an illusion of continued flight. Orrin had inherited none of the mom's phobias about disorder, hygiene. Not crazy about bugs, though. Roaches. But he just sat there squeezing the ball, looking at the bird without a conscious thought in his head. By the next morning, waking up, curled and entombed, it seemed like it had to have been a bad sign, though. Orrin now always gets the shower so hot it's to where he can just barely stand it. The condo's whole bathroom is done in this kind of minty yellow tile he didn't choose, maybe chosen by the free safety who lived here before the Cardinals sent New Orleans the free safety, 2 reserve guards, and cash for Orrin Incandenza, Punter. And no matter how many times he has the Terminex people out, there are still the enormous roaches that come out of the bathroom drains. Sewer roaches, according to Terminex. Blattaria implacabilis or something. Really huge roaches. Armored vehicle-type bugs. Totally black with Kevlar-type cases, the works. And fearless, raised in the Hobbesian sewers down there. Boston's and New Orleans' little brown roaches were bad enough, but you could at least come in and turn on the light and they'd run for their lives. These Southwest sewer roaches, you turn on the light, and they just look up at you from the tile like, "You got a problem?" Orrin stomped on one of them, only once, that had come up hellishly out of the drain in the shower when he was in there, showering, going out naked and putting shoes on and coming in and trying to conventionally squash it, and the result was explosive. There's still material from that one time in the tile grouting. It seems unremovable. Roach innards. Sickening. Throwing the shoes away is preferable to looking at the sole to clean it. Now, he keeps big glass tumblers in the bathroom, and when he turns on the light and sees a roach, he puts a glass down over it, trapping it. After a couple of days, the glass is all steamed up and the roach has asphyxiated, messlessly, and Orrin discards both the roach and the tumbler in separate sealed Ziplocs in the dumpster complex by the golf course up the street. The yellow tile floor of the bathroom is sometimes a little obstacle course of glasses with huge roaches dying inside, stoically, just sitting there, the glasses gradually steaming up with roach dioxide. The whole thing makes Orrin sick. Now he figures the hotter the shower's water, the less chance any small armored vehicle is going to feel like coming out of the drain while he's in there. Sometimes they're in the bowl of the toilet first thing in the a.m., dog paddling, trying to get to the side and climb up. He's also not crazy about spiders, though more like unconsciously. He's never come any place close to the conscious horror himself had somehow developed about the Southwest's black widows and their chaotic webs. The widows are all over the place, both here and Tucson. Spottable on all but the coldest nights, their dusty webs without any kind of pattern, plotting just about any right-angled place that's dim or out of the way. Terminex's toxins are more effective on the widows. Orrin has them out monthly. He's on like a subscription plan over at Terminex. Orrin's special conscious horror, besides heights and the early morning, is roaches. There had been parts of Metro Boston near the bay he'd refused to go to as a child. Roaches give him the howling fantods. The parishes around N.O. had been having a spate or outbreak of a certain Latin-origin breed of sinister tropical flying roaches that were small and timid but could fucking fly. And that kept being found swarming on New Orleans infants at night, in their cribs, especially infants in, tenements or squalor, and that reportedly fed on the mucus in the baby's eyes, some special sort of optical mucus, the stuff of fucking nightmares. Mobile flying roaches that wanted to get at your eyes as an infant, and were reportedly blinding them. Parents had come in the ghastly AM tenement light and find their infants blind. Like a dozen blinded infants that last summer. And it was during this spate or nightmarish outbreak, plus July flooding that sent over a dozen nightmarish dead bodies from a hilltop graveyard, sliding all gray-blue down the incline, Orrin and two teammates had their townhouse on, in suburban Chalmette, shedding limbs and innards all the way down the hillside's mud, and one morning coming to rest against the post of their roadside mailbox when Orrin came out for the morning paper, that Orrin had had his agent put out the trade feelers. And so, to the glass canyons and merciless light of Metro Phoenix, in a kind of desiccated circle, near the Tucson of his own father's desiccated youth. It's the mornings after the Spider and Heights dreams that are the most painful, that it takes sometimes 3 coffees and 2 showers and sometimes a run to loosen the grip on his soul's throat. And these post-dream mornings are even worse if he wakes up unalone, if the previous night's subject is still there, wanting to Twitter or to cuddle and spoon, asking what exactly is the story with the foggy inverted tumblers on the bathroom floor, commenting on his night sweats, clattering around in the kitchen, making kippers or bacon or something even more hideous and unhoneyed he's supposed to eat with post-coital male gusto. The ones who have this thing about, they call it, feeding my man, wanting a man who can barely keep down AM honey toast to eat with male gusto, elbows out and shoveling, making little noises. Even when alone, able to uncurl alone and sit up slowly and wring out the sheet and go to the bathroom, these darkest mornings start days that Orrin can't even bring himself for hours to think about how he'll get through the day. These worst mornings with cold floors and hot windows and merciless light. The soul's certainty that the day will have to be not traversed but sort of climbed vertically, and then that going to sleep again at the end of it will be like falling again off something tall and sheer. So, now his own eye mucus is secure in the desert southwest, but the bad dreams have gotten worse since the trade to this blasted area himself had fled, long ago as an unhappy youngster. As a nod to Orrin's own unhappy youth, all the dreams seem to open briefly with some sort of competitive tennis situation. Last night's had started with a wide-angle shot of Orrin on a hard-true court, waiting to receive serve from someone vague, some academy person. Ross Reet, maybe, or good old M. Bain, or gray-toothed Walt Fletchett, now a teaching pro in the Carolinas. When the dream's screen tightens on him and abruptly dissolves to the blank dark rose color of eyes closed against bright light, and there's the ghastly feeling of being submerged and not knowing which way to head for the surface and air, and after some interval the dreams Orrin struggles up from this kind of visual suffocation to find his mother's head, Mrs. Avril M. T. Incandenza's, the mom's disconnected head, attached face to his own fine head, strapped tight to his face somehow by a wraparound system of VS high-pro top-shelf lamb gut string from his Academy racket's own face, so that no matter how frantically Orrin tries to move his head or shake it side to side or twist up his face or roll his eyes, he's still staring at, into, and somehow through his mother's face. As if the mom's head was some sort of overtight helmet Orrin can't wrestle his way out of.
2.
Note number 2. Orrin's never once darkened the door of any sort of therapy professional, by the way, so his takes on his dreams are always generally pretty surface level. End of note 2.
In the dream, it's understandably vital to Oren that he disengage his head from this phylactery-ish bind of his mother's disembodied head, and he cannot. Last night's subject's note indicates that at some point last night Oren had clutched her head with both hands and tried to sort of stiff-arm her, though not in an ungentle or complaining way. The note, not the stiff-arm. The apparent amputation of Mom's head from the rest of the Mom's appears in the dream to be clean and surgically neat. There is no evidence of a stump, or any kind of nubbin of neck, even, and it is as if the base of the round, pretty head had been sealed, and also sort of rounded off so that her head is a large living ball, a globe with a face attached to his own head's face. The subject after Bain's sister, but before the one just before this one, with the ambush scent and the hearts over eyes. The previous subject had been a sallowly pretty, Arizona State developmental psychology grad student with 2 kids and outrageous alimony and pensions for sharp jewelry, refrigerated chocolate, interlace educational cartridges, and professional athletes who thrashed in their sleep. Not real bright. She thought the figure he'd trace without thinking on her bare flank after sex was the numeral 8, to give you an idea. Their last morning together, right before he'd mailed her child an expensive toy, and then had his phone number changed, he'd awakened from a night of horror show dreams, woke up with an abrupt fetal spasm, unrefreshed and benighted of soul, his eyes wobbling and his wet silhouette on the bottom sheet like a coroner's chalk outline. He woke to find the subject up and sitting up against the reading pillow, wearing his sleeveless academy sweatshirt and sipping hazelnut espresso and watching, on the cartridge viewing system that occupied half the bedroom's south wall, something horrific called Interlace Educational Cartridges in conjunction with CBC Educational Programming Matrix presents Schizophrenia, Mind or Body. And it had to lie there, moist and paralyzed, curled fetal on his own sweat shadow, and watch on the viewer a pale young guy about Hal's age, with copper stubble and a red cowlick and flat, blank, effectless black doll's eyes, stare into space stage left, while a brisk Albertan voiceover explained that Fenton here was a dyed-in-the-wool paranoid schizophrenic who believed that radioactive fluids were invading his skull, and that hugely complex high-tech type machines had been specially designed and programmed to pursue him without cease until they caught him and made brutal sport of him and buried him alive. It was an old, late-millennial CBC public interest Canadian news documentary, digitally sharpened and re-disseminated under the Interlace imprimatur. Interlace could get kind of seedy and low rent during early morning off hours in terms of spontaneous disseminations. And so, but since the old CBC documentary's thesis was turning out pretty clearly to be schizophrenia body, the voiceover evinced great clipped good cheer as it explained that, well, yes, poor old Fenton here was more or less hopeless as an extra-institutional functioning unit, but that, on the upside, science could at least give his existence some sort of meaning by studying him very carefully to help learn how schizophrenia manifested itself in the human body's brain. That, in other words, with the aid of cutting-edge positron emission topography, or PET technology, since supplanted wholly by invasive digitals, Oren hears the developmental psychology graduate student mutter to herself, watching rapt over her cup, unaware that Oren's paralytically awake. They could scan and study how different parts of poor old Fenton's dysfunctional brain emitted positrons in a whole different topography than your average hale and hearty, non-delusional, God-fearing Albertan's brain. Advancing science by injecting test subject Fenton here with a special blood-brain barrier penetrating radioactive dye, and then sticking him in the rotating body-sized receptacle of a PET scanner. On the viewer, it's an enormous gray metal machine that looks like something co-designed by James Cameron and Fritz Lang. And now have a look at this Fenton fellow's eyes as he starts to get the gist of what the voiceover is saying. And in a terse old public TV cut, they now showed subject Fenton, in 5-point canvas restraints, whipping his copper-haired head from side to side as guys in mint green surgical masks and caps inject him with radioactive fluids through a turkey baster-sized syringe. Then, good old Fenton's eyes bugging out in total foreseen horror as he's rolled toward the huge gray PET device and slid like an unrisen loaf into the thing's open maw until only his decay-colored sneakers are in view. And the body-sized receptacle rotates the test subject counterclockwise with brutal speed so that the old sneakers point up, and then left, and then down, and then right, and then up, faster and faster. The machine's blurps and tweets not even coming close to covering Fenton's entombed howls as his worst delusional fears came true in digital stereo, and you could hear the last surviving bits of his functional, dye-permeated mind being screamed out of him for all time as the viewer digitally superimposed an image of Fenton's ember-red and neutron-blue brain in the lower right corner, where Interlace's time-temp functions usually appear, and the brisk voiceover gave capsule histories of first paranoid schizophrenia, and then PET. With Orrin lying there, slit-eyed, wet and neuralgic, with AM dread, wishing the subject would put her own clothes and sharp jewelry on and take the rest of her Toblerone out of the freezer and go, so he could go to the bathroom and get yesterday's asphyxiated roaches into an EWD dumpster before the dumpster's all filled for the day, and decide what kind of expensive present to mail the subject's kid. And then, the matter of the dead bird, out of nowhere. And then, news of pressure from the AZ Cardinal administration to cooperate with some sort of insipid-type personality profile series of interviews with some profiler from Moment magazine, with personal, backgroundish questions to be answered in some blandly sincere, team PR way, the unexamined stress of which drives him to start calling Haley again, reopen that whole Pandora's box of worms. Orrin also shaves in the shower, face red with heat, wreathed in steam, by feel, shaving upward with south to north strokes as he was taught.